Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for staying for the pros and cons presentation. We're talking about the 10 propositions that are on the ballot this year. And my name is Anna Pan, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters. And you've met Paul. Paul is also a League member and super important guy because he's our treasurer. And he's been with the League for 5 years?
6.
6 years, excuse me. Your bio needs updating.
Okay.
He, along with being our treasurer, he's in a variety of committees, pros and cons committee, mis and disinformation, I don't know, just a lot of them.
Yeah.
He brings about 25 years of professional experience, primarily in the technology area. And he has worked on many large projects, and I don't remember any more than that, other than it was technology related.
So yeah, I always kind of, when we go around internally, I always introduce myself as the resident techie. So I try to help, introduce some new technologies that I've worked with in the past.
And some of us are better than others at accepting that help. I bring about 25 years of business experience at the executive level in human resources, and formally joined the League about a year ago, have supported it financially all of my life, but really wanted to get involved this year in terms of just really putting the effort in where my beliefs lie. So I love this League, and I'm happy to be a part of it. One thing I think we can, so the League of Women Voters, who are we? The League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley, we're over 100 years old, and we're a nonpartisan organization. We believe in encouraging informed and active participation in government. And one thing I really want to stress is the fact that the League never, ever, in its 104-year history, has ever endorsed a candidate or a party. We feel very strongly about remaining nonpartisan. And so you probably heard me even asking some folks to remove their badges and things like that, because we really want to make it a very welcoming environment for anybody who wants to join us. Today we will actually have our education hats on. We do influence public policy through education and advocacy. And we invite anyone who would like to join us in the League to come and have lunch with us. We usually have lunch on second Wednesday of the month. And we would love to have you come and pitch in. So what are pros and cons? This is a way that we want to present the information in a very orderly way. So you will see the issues, which, what is this trying to change? The context, how does it fit? And the arguments for and against. In addition to that, you will also see there is additional research that's occurred, and so that we could provide you information as to who has donated to the various propositions, who's supporting it, and who the opposition is and what their donations have been. And because we really want everyone to make an informed decision, and we think this is the best way to do that. So there are 10 state ballot measures in the November 2024 election. And 5 of them are initiatives that have been, that are citizen initiatives. And there are 5 of them that have been placed on the ballot by the legislature. And the legislature, per the California Constitution, is required to put certain ballot measures before the voters. And an example is anytime that you want to change the California Constitution, you have to put that in front of the voters. The citizens initiatives are typically gathered, that's where you have the signatures gathering and people who are trying to get support for a particular proposition. Those are the citizens' initiatives, and those are on the ballot as well. So there's 5 and 5.
All right.
Oh, you want to, okay.
So, a lot of our research came through Ballotpedia. We looked at CalMatters, and we looked at the Legislative Analyst Office, trying to find as many resources to support the things that we're going to talk about tonight. So let's jump in on the first one.
I would just say one thing, that there's a lot of analysis that occurs by the League of Women Voters California. So there's a state group that does a great deal of analysis, and then we augment that analysis with the other sources as well.
Right, thank you. So the first proposition, and we've kind of been using proposition and measurements or measures interchangeably, but it's really the state propositions and like local measures. But there a lot of times they're similar, so you'll hear us use both words. So Proposition 2 is a bond for public school and community college facilities. I think many of you know that many of the schools and colleges are in need of repairs, renovations, and new classrooms, and state government helps to raise the money to help build and repair those facilities by selling those bonds. So this proposition allows the state to sell up to $10 billion in bonds to help build and repair schools. Up to 8.5 billion would go to K through 12 schools, and 1.5 billion would go to community colleges. So what are the fiscal effects? According to the Legislative Analyst Office, the state would need to spend about $500 million per year for the next 35 years to repay those bonds. The effects on the local government really depends on, what the different school districts decide and the colleges decide to do. So they'll have their own lists. So what do the supporters say? And I'll mention one thing, is that even if the state provides bond money, the local districts would still have to provide 40 to 50% match or equivalent, however you want to call that, before they can tap into that bond money from the state. So what do the supporters say? The bonds will help pay for badly needed repairs and security improvements, thereby making the schools and communities safer. It includes broadband access, HVAC, plumbing, and structural improvements. There is something in the bond that says a lower contribution could be required from poorer districts. What do the opponents say? Well, they say Prop 2 makes taxpayers pay bond interest for many, many years, as we said in the intro, up to 35 years, and they feel it will go to wasteful construction projects instead of to actual classroom instruction. So some additional information. I talked about the 40 to 50% of the cost. Some opposition is based on the inequity of the system, which is why that was built into the bond. But supporters say that it adds to improved schools, which results in improved test scores, improved attendance at the school, and hopefully result in fewer suspensions. So what have we seen in terms of contributors and funders to both the supporting and opposing this measure? Supporting is the California building industry. Yes on Prop 2, which is a coalition of adequate school housing issues committee, the Association of California School Administrators, California Alliance for Jobs, and miscellaneous smaller donations for a total of about 2.4 million. And this was from a couple of days ago, so it could be more than that. We will, as we go through this season, we'll probably update it, but you're all kind of in the beginning of our cycle. There's no funding that we could find from the opposing side, but the Harvard-Jarvis Tax Association is opposing the bond measure.
And I would just add in terms of Prop 2, that when Paul mentioned that there's an inequity in the way that the schools get funded, the reason for that is that in a neighborhood that is maybe doesn't have, that's economically disadvantaged, for example, that neighborhood is going to have a much more difficult time trying to get a bond measure passed to add taxes to, the community, the property taxes. And so the legislature did make a small adjustment, but it's really not meaningful in terms of the disadvantaged communities do not have to raise as much money. They're basically are going to get kind of like a 5% break, and the state will pick up that extra amount. But
Right, and it's also a little bit of a race, the school districts that have more involvement and are a little better positioned. They already know what kind of projects they want to do, which might not necessarily be the case for all districts.
And so that's the inequity that has been discussed and that has been a bit of a point of contention. So Prop 3 is relatively easy to figure out. So it's a constitutional right to marriage. And the question before the voter is, should the California Constitution be amended to define marriage as a fundamental right for all, regardless of sex or race, and remove language that states that marriage is only between a man and a woman? All right, so the situation is that the Constitution, the California Constitution says that only marriage between a man and a woman is legal. And the US Supreme Court, as you know, actually ruled that it is unconstitutional to say that marriage is only between a man and a woman, and that same-sex couples must be treated the same as opposite-sex couples. And in California, same-sex couples can get married, but we still have this language in our Constitution. So the proposal is to amend the Constitution to enshrine marriage equality regardless of gender, sexual orientation, or race. And in terms of a fiscal effect, there really isn't one that anybody could identify. Supporters say the California Constitution should affirm marriage equality, which is the law of the United States. So basically, let's clean up the language. Prop 3 protects the fundamental right to marry regardless of gender or race. Opponents say same-sex marriage is already legal, so there's no need to change California's Constitution. And they're also saying that Prop 3 removes all rules for marriage, opening the door to child marriages, incest, and polygamy. In terms of more information, as you know, in 2008, Prop 8 amended the state constitution. That's when it amended it to say that marriage was only between a man and a woman, which now, of course, we know violates the US Constitution. I'd like to add that incest, polygamy, it is still illegal, and that this change in the language of the California Constitution doesn't change any of the laws that govern those two things. And marriage under age 18 is still illegal, regardless of the change in the Constitution, and it's illegal without parental and court approval. You have to be age 18 to make those decisions for yourself. In terms of people or groups that support Prop 3, you see a list here. Kevin DeLeon, Believing in a Better California Ballot Measure Committee, and his name appears a couple of times on several different propositions. Yes on Proposition 3, sponsored by Equality California, Federated Indians of Grafton Rancheria, California Federation of Teachers, ACLU of Northern California, California Works, Senator Tony Atkins Committee, and Planned Parenthood. And so I thought that there was a total on here, but so you can see the various amounts that the different groups collected. In terms of opposition, there's the California Family Council and the American Council of Evangelicals. No money was raised, but they do oppose the change in language.
So I tried to quickly add it up. It is around $4 million that the supporters raised for this proposition.
Paul's just showing off because he can do math in his head.
I do it in my head. My wife always tells me she will not do it in her head because she's an accountant, and she says, I can't make mistakes, so I use a calculator. Prop 4, so this is another bond measure. This is a bond that authorizes a bond for safe drinking water, wildfire prevention, and protecting communities and natural lands from climate risk. So the question is, should voters let the state sell up to $10 billion in bonds for various projects to reduce climate risks and its impacts? So the situation is that climate change is negatively impacting all Californians, but especially people with low incomes. The proposal is to allow the state to sell $10 billion in bonds for the projects for water, wildfire, coastal resilience, fish, wildlife, clean air, and to mitigate extreme heat. The fiscal impacts have been estimated that the state would pay about $4 million per year for the next 40 years to repay the bond. Protecting natural resources could reduce costs of future damage. So the proponents say it will help protect our communities, our health, and the economy. The opponents say that the bonds are the most expensive way to fund government spending and should not be used. Prop 4 provides for funding for unproven technologies with no real evidence of success. So contributors and other funders of the supporters and opponents. So the supporters include Clean Action, National Wildlife Federation, California Professional Firefighters, and the California Labor Federation, and miscellaneous small donors have raised almost $650,000. The opponents, as we saw with Prop 2, include the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association, Senate GOP leader Brian Jones, Assembly member Jim Patterson, and as we said, we could not find funding so far against this proposition.
And I would just add on Prop 4 and the other proposition that typically the reason that you see bonds is it's rather the equivalent of a mortgage, if you will. You can't do large-scale infrastructure type of work in a state without borrowing. And that's what bonds are. You're borrowing money to get that done.
And I think one of the things that you know, with the research that we've done, we found that, you know, about 40 years ago, we had like $1 billion disaster, like maybe every 4 years or so. Now we have it about every 3 weeks. I mean, that's how it has changed over the years.
Okay. Prop 5. Prop 5 is, allows local bonds for affordable housing and public infrastructure, and with a 55% voter approval. So what the question is, should local bond measures to fund housing bonds for low and middle income Californians and public infrastructure projects be allowed to pass with 55% voter approval instead of the currently required 66.7% approval? The situation is current law requires 66.7% of voters to vote yes to pass a local bond measure. Affordable housing is a key issue across the state. And the proposal is, let's lower the voting requirement so that some types of local bond measures can pass with a 55% of the vote. There's little effect on the state budget, but it would impact local budgets because, again, local measures would, in order to raise matching funds, would require more debt. Prop 5 decreases the vote requirement for local housing, and supporters say Prop 5 gives local communities more tools to make housing affordable and will allow local voters to address community needs such as housing and safe streets. Opponents say Prop 5 changes existing protections from high debt caused by bond issues in the California Constitution. Prop 5 pushes cost of infrastructure onto local governments and taxpayers. In terms of additional information, California faces significant shortage of affordable housing. Lowering voter threshold to pass affordable housing and infrastructure bonds helps local governments meet state mandates for new housing units. And it does include a ban on using bond funds to buy single-family homes to convert into affordable units. So what we're talking about here is we're talking about multi-family housing, not single-family housing. Opposition to Prop 5, California Association of Realtors, National Association of Realtors, California Business Roundtable, California Business Properties Association, and Gerald J. Marcel. I actually looked up who this person was. He's a developer. Supporters of Prop 5, California Professional Firefighters, and Habitat for Humanity. One of the sort of additional information on Prop 5 would be that the feeling is that having such a high amount of high percentage for voter approval is problematic because it's almost impossible to get it, to get that number, that percentage of people to agree on anything. And that what you have in that situation where you require 66.7% to approve it, is you have basically 1/3 of the voting population saying, we don't want this, where you may have 2/3 or almost 2/3 who say that they do. And so it's a small number of people who can basically say no, and we're not going to do this. Gosh, there was one more point on this.
Well, we'll come back to that when so Prop 6 is also referenced as the End Slavery in California Act, and it would eliminate any constitutional provisions allowing involuntary servitude for incarcerated persons. So the question to the voters is, should the California Constitution be amended to remove the provision that allows involuntary servitude to be used as punishment for a crime, prohibit punishment for refusing a work assignment, and allow voluntary work assignments in exchange for credit to reduce sentences? So the situation is that the current Constitution prohibits forced labor except as punishment for a crime. 16 states, including California, allow this exception. The proposal is to amend the Constitution to prohibit involuntary servitude for any reason, prohibit disciplining people in prison who refuse a work assignment. The fiscal effects on state and local costs are uncertain at this point. Any effect unlikely to exceed tens of millions of dollars a year, which is still a good chunk of money, but in the big picture of California, maybe they consider it a small amount. So the supporters say that Proposition 6 would restore human dignity by ending forced labor, which constitutes essentially slavery and violates human rights. It improves public safety by focusing on rehabilitation of incarcerated people. The opponents say there was no argument filed from opponents to Proposition 6. The supporters include All of Us or Non-Action Network, ACLU of Northern California, Communities United for Restorative Youth Justice, and miscellaneous donations for a total of about $320,000. Other supporters included the California Teachers Association and the California Black Legislative Caucus, who had put this before the legislation as part of a bigger package initially. We could not find any funding for opponents, but the Howard Jarvis Tax Association opposes this proposition.
I would add, in terms of additional information, that some of these individuals who are incarcerated are paid 75 cents an hour for the work that they do. And as an example, the individuals who go out and risk their lives fighting fires may receive up to $10 a day for their efforts.
So that's one of the reasons why the impact is very uncertain, because it is yet to be determined how those people would be paid, whether it continues under the current arrangement, or if like federal laws regarding minimum wages could kick into this, whether it's federal or state. So that's where the impact is very unknown at this point.
And the federal minimum wage is less than $8 an hour. But obviously there would be a fiscal impact. But so that's a little bit of an additional information on that. On Proposition 32, so the question is, should California raise its statewide minimum wage to $18 an hour by January 1st, 2026, and then each year thereafter based on inflation? So the situation is, the statewide minimum wage is currently $16 an hour. Certain industries and cities have higher minimum wages. As an example, in fast food, it's a minimum $20 an hour. For healthcare workers, I believe it was between $23 and $25 an hour. And so those individuals already have higher levels of pay, and this would not change that. It would not lower their pay. The proposal is raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour for all employees by 2026. Wage would adjust for cost of living each year thereafter, starting after 2026. And it would not lower wages for people who are already making over $18 an hour, as I said. Fiscal effect, there are fiscal effects. Higher wages for state and local employees will increase government costs. Revenues will likely decrease, and lower use of Medi-Cal and CalFresh, which are state programs, could potentially save hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's really unknown, because individuals who are now earning more money, higher annual salary, might become ineligible for those programs. So that's how they feel that it could lower the use of those programs and therefore save the state money. Supporters say raising the minimum wage will improve the standard of living for millions of workers and promote economic fairness. Opponents say raising the minimum wage will hurt businesses, raise prices, and cause job losses, and taxes may be raised if governments pay more wages. So some of those supporters are Working Hero Action for the Living Wage, Kevin DeLeon, Believing in a Better California Ballot Measure Committee, for a total of $10.8 million that they raised. Opponents, Californians Against Job Losses and Higher Prices, No 132, and they raised $10,000. All
right, Proposition 33. This would expand the local government's authority to enact rent control on residential property. So the question is, should the Costa-Hawkins Rental Housing Act of 1995, which is a state law, be repealed so local governments can regulate rents? So the current situation is that the state law prevents rent control on single-family homes and housing built after early 1995. Some cities have rent control laws limiting how much landlords can increase rents. The proposal is to remove the law that prohibits rent control on single-family homes and stop the state from limiting local governments from having rent control. The fiscal effects are estimated to be little on the state budget, but it could impact local budgets. It will really depend on how many cities and counties pass rent control laws and then what landlords will do. So the supporters say that Prop 33 will allow local governments to protect renters, and local voters will be able to decide on whether and how to control rents, because even if it goes to the local government, the voters still have a say in that. Opponents say that Prop 33 will increase the cost to build housing, therefore making the state's housing crisis even worse. Prop 33 will drive up costs for renters and homebuyers. So what we found in terms of supporters and contributions, the AIDS Healthcare Foundation raised about $30.5 million in support of this proposition. Kevin DeLeon for Lieutenant Governor contributed about $600,000, United Here 11, and then miscellaneous small deductions for a total of $31.2. Other supporters include renters and homeowners for rent control, yes on 33, and Kevin DeLeon again with Believing in a Better California. The opposition and contributions include the California Apartment Association, the California Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors, and the California Association of Realtors Issues Mobilization PAC. So those all together raised about $48 million out of the total of $53.9 million. So other opposition includes the Michael K. Haight, which includes Western National Group and affiliated entities, and other miscellaneous donations.
And it's important to pay attention to the fact that Prop 33 and Prop 34 are connected. And you heard that one of the big supporters of Prop 33 was the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And they were a big contributor in support of rent control. And you also saw that the California Apartment Association and other real estate interests opposed Prop 33. If you look at Prop 34, you'll see that there's some very, I think, interesting language in terms of who is going to be covered by Prop 34. So the question for Prop 34 is, should certain, underline certain, healthcare providers be required to spend 98% of revenues from a federal discount prescription drug program on direct patient care? And should the state be permanently authorized to negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices? The situation, healthcare providers earn revenues from a federal drug discount program, and then these providers, they decide how to spend the income. And Medi-Cal provides coverage to people with low incomes, if you weren't aware of that. The proposal create new rules about how certain healthcare providers spend money earned from the drug discount program. And it allows the state to permanently negotiate Medi-Cal drug prices. In terms of a fiscal impact, it could be millions of dollars to identify and punish providers who violate the law. Fines will likely be imposed on those providers. Supporters say Prop 34 will ensure money from the discounted drug program is used for direct patient care. Currently, those proceeds can be used in any way that that provider feels is appropriate given their mission. Prop 34 will make the discount program permanent, which means currently at whatever rate the that those taxes are, those dollars from the direct patient care, from the discounted drug program, that would remain at that level forever. Currently, the state legislature actually can change that contribution or that tax amount, and how much they're going to take and what they're going to use it for. And Prop 34 basically says, this is how it's going to get used, and this is how it's going to be forever, basically, until somebody can change the law again, if that ever happens. So opponents say Prop 34 targets one healthcare provider that supports rent control. And we also wanted to say that federal law allows profits from drug discounts to support any nonprofit mission of healthcare providers. So currently they have more latitude, and this would take that away. Supporters are yes on 34, Protect Patients Now, 14.9 million, and the California Apartment Association. Opponents are Stop the Revenge Initiative, no on 34, 120,000, and the AIDS Healthcare Foundation. And in terms of Stop the Revenge Initiative, the idea here being that initiatives were not supposed to just simply target one group. And what this says is that its potential is that you can have somebody who's very well funded basically go after anybody who wants to put an initiative on the ballot that they disagree with.
All right, so, Anna talked about, in the previous proposition about Medi-Cal, and so, in the rest of the country that is known as Medicaid, and that's really the biggest health insurance program in the United States that has over 80 million enrollees, which includes both Medicaid and the Children's Health Program, CHIP. 1 in 5 Americans is on Medicaid, and it's basically the largest revenue source for the states. So Proposition 5, it would provide permanent funding for Medi-Cal healthcare services. So the question is, should California make permanent an existing tax on managed healthcare plans to provide ongoing funding for Medi-Cal and other healthcare services? The current situation is that California pays for parts of its share of Medi-Cal through a temporary tax on managed care organizations, also known as MCOs. So the proposal is to make the temporary tax permanent and create new rules for how the tax money can actually be spent. The fiscal effects are estimated to increase an increase of about $2 to $5 billion per year to fund Medi-Cal and other healthcare programs, and additional costs cover services not included in this Proposition 35. Supporters say that, and this is a typo, and we will unfortunately not be able to correct it, but it means Prop 35 will support health services and improve access to doctors that help low-income people. Opponents say there were no arguments filed officially against Prop 35. Some additional information: the San Francisco Chronicle editorial board opposes Prop 35, And some of the main reasons they included is that they consider it ballot box budgeting, and it would eliminate the flexibility of the legislature to determine how money is spent as state income fluctuates over the years. This would require a 3/4 vote in both legislative houses to change the law, or a new proposition that would go to the voters for any change. Federal government has basically warned California that Prop 35 is trying to exploit the system, and therefore they think that funding could be reduced in future years. Supporters include the California Hospital Committee on Issues, Global Medical Response, California Medical Association, California Primary Care Association, Air Methods Corporation, Ultimate Health Services Corporation, California Dental Association, Family Health Center of San Diego, and miscellaneous other donations, for a total of, it's kind of in the corner, but it's almost $49 million. The opponents include the California Pan-Ethnic Health Network, the Children's Partnership, California Alliance for Retired Americans, and Courage California, and we were not able to find any reported donations for Prop 35.
Prop 36. This is, I think, an interesting proposition. So the question is, should California allow people to be charged with felonies for possessing certain drugs and for thefts under $950 if the defendant has 2 prior drug or theft convictions? The situation, if you remember, back in 2014, a ballot measure turned nonviolent crimes like drug possession and shoplifting into misdemeanors unless someone had prior convictions for serious crimes. The proposal is to turn some misdemeanors back into felonies and lengthen sentences and require some sentences to be served in prison. And by studying this proposition, I learned that there's a difference between jail and prison. Prison is at the state level, and jail would be like in, a local county or city. What's the fiscal impact? Increased state and local costs for prisons, jails, and mental health and drug treatment, likely between tens to hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And the reason for that is because one of the things that happened when the law in 2014 was passed is that a lot of people didn't end up having to go to prison or to jail because it was prosecuted as a misdemeanor versus a felony. And what this does is that it automatically takes 2 misdemeanors, and on the third one, sort of a third strike, you now have a felony. And the punishment for that is going to be prison, and it's going to probably increase the prison population as a result. Supporters say Prop 36 makes communities safer by holding repeat thieves accountable and making thieves and drug dealers serve tougher sentences. Opponents say Prop 36 would make California less safe by stopping crime prevention and drug treatment programs, and that Prop 36 would cost taxpayers billions. Opponents say Prop 36 erodes criminal justice reform by reversing advances aimed at reducing mass incarceration. It imposes stricter sentencing laws that disproportionately impact lower income and people of color, and that it shifts dollars from treatment and rehab to prisons. Supporters of Prop 36, yes on 36, Californians for safer communities, Californians for safe stores and neighborhoods, and you'll see a lot of big box names here. Walmart, 2.5 million, Target, 1.5 million, Home Depot, 1 million, California Business Roundtable, 370,000, 7-Eleven, 300,000. Opponents of Prop 36, Committee to Protect Public Safety, no on 36, 195,000, and the ACLU Northern California, 100,000. Some additional information on Prop 36. Prop 36 rolls back parts of Prop 47 passed in 2014 intended to reduce prison overcrowding. It reclassifies some misdemeanors into felonies. It imposes harsher sentences for drug possession and retail theft, and shifts incarceration from county jail to state prison. And I know that you've probably seen commercials for, in support of Prop 36, and they will show, for example, the smash and grab situations occurring. And I don't think it's on here, but the case is that those would always be punishable as a felony. Almost all of that, one, is going to result in more than $950 stolen, and that's really a part of organized crime. And again, that has always been punishable as a felony. So the Legislative Analyst's Office, I had to think of what LAO stood for, estimates increase in state prison population will result in increased costs of prisons, local and state courts, because now all the courts have to also prosecute all of these felonies. It will reduce dollars for programs for crime victims, K through 12 kids, and those in need of mental health and substance abuse services. So those are the 10 ballot measures and that you'll get to vote on. I don't know if there are any questions that you may have on any of those ballot propositions. So we're wearing our educational hat today, and we really have to keep it tightly affixed to our heads. If you are interested in additional information about who else may have supported or opposed a particular ballot measure, you're welcome to go to the Secretary of State. Your own actually voter guide tells you who's in support and against, and any of the other websites that we mentioned, including vote411.org. We'll have that information on there as well.
And, you know, as we said in our introduction, we take positions on issues. And so you could find that information on our local website as well, which is lwvdv.org.
Yes, in the back.
I just want to say that the league recommends.
The league recommends rather than takes positions. Yes, that's a good clarification. Thank you. Okay. We wouldn't be the league if we didn't remind you to vote. And the election's November the 5th. The ballot should be in your mailbox very soon. They do get mailed on the 7th. And if you aren't registered, the last day to register to vote by mail is October 21st. Drop boxes will be open October 8th. Be sure to sign your ballot, please, or you're going to be getting a call, and the Department of Elections will have to do a lot of extra work to make sure that the person who filled out that ballot is the person who dropped it in the box. So be sure to sign your ballot. And also you can sign up for Where's My Ballot? And that's a wonderful way you can find out if the Department of Elections got your ballot, if they counted your ballot. It's fantastic. They'll just send you a text telling you giving you all of that information.
So I happened to talk to the registrar for the Contra Costa County Elections Office last week, and he said the ballots will be mailed in free drops. So I think a third will be dropped on the 7th, third on the 8th, and a third on the 9th. So if you don't get it on the 7th, don't be alarmed. You might be in that second or third group. And in terms of Where's My Ballot, it tells you when your ballot is being mailed to you. So if you don't have it, after like a week or so, then you might want to follow up with the elections department saying, hey, I was expecting, my ballot, and I haven't gotten a notification, so kind of curious what's going on, and they can help you with that. And then, like Anna said, they will tell you when they receive it back, once they process it, whether you send it back through the postal service or through a Dropbox. I saw when we walked in, there's one right there in front of the library, so that will open on October 8th. And then, there's other election information that you can find on the Secretary of State's website and, contra costa vote, and I mentioned that in the previous sessions as well.
And although the 21st of October may be the last day to register by mail, you can also, you can actually vote, still fill out a ballot at any polling location. And you can always go to the Department of Elections also and cast your vote. So we want to make sure you know about Vote 411.
I just want to say that you can register, but if you do go to the county office of elections or any of the early polling sites when they open, deadline,
And you'll be casting a provisional ballot.
Yes.
then your ballot you're casting will go into provisional until they can verify your registration.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So, the question was what, with regards to registering to vote, if you missed that October 21st deadline, that you can still vote, but you would have to go to a polling station or the elections office, and you would register to vote, and then at the same time, you would cast your ballot, which will be a provisional ballot.
Yes.
Last time when we voted in person, which we often do, the sign-in was one of those things where you did your signature on a digital screen with your finger, and things look so peculiar. How on earth would they ascertain that it was the same signature they have on file?
Right, so the question, and we got comment from the back that they are not picking up the question, so I'm going to repeat them. So the question is about signatures, like when we used to vote in person, or when you go vote in person, now we have these iPads where you would basically sign when your voting record, your voting information comes up, and a lot of people just kind of scribble. And yes, that's true, but when you're being, and I've been a poll worker, so when you're voting in person and you're being asked who you are and to confirm your address information, we're pretty sure that that's the person who's there. I think the signature really comes into play when you vote by mail. And so, that would be on the back of the envelope. And basically what happens in those situations, when they come back to the elections department, they compare it to all the signatures that they have on file for you. So, before the pandemic, if you went in person and, you probably remember the books where you actually had to sign, those signatures are captured. Whatever you use to register with the DMV, that is captured. So, and they've done studies on signatures, and you think like your signature changes a lot over the years, and in some ways they do, but in a lot of ways they don't, because you're still kind of making the same motions. So they're actually pretty good at being able to look at the signatures. And I can tell you from my experience, I've been, and Sean is one. Did you go through the certified election office?
I did not. I'm a
observation?
poll worker.
Yeah, so we went through a program where the elections office basically shows us, how the process works. And, when the ballots, the vote by mail ballots come back, a machine is capturing the signature, but a human is the one who is comparing the signatures. So they're presenting with your history of signature, with that signature on that ballot and envelope, and they look whether that is the same or not. And if they have any questions, they put it aside and, supervisor looks at it, et cetera.
I think the file that I have is my first name, my middle initial, and my last name, the way I usually sign my name, but the ballot always comes now with my full three names.
And that's how you should, so the question was, or the statement is that the ballot comes with your full name, and that's how you should sign it. Whatever your ballot says is how you should sign it. So mine's my first name, my middle initial, and my last name. So, yeah. All right, well, we just want to thank you very much for listening. It's been a long evening. If you want to know more, go to Vote 411. It's a great source of information. We follow up with candidates. We ask them to put their candidate statement on there in their own words. We don't edit it. And so they can tell you who they are and what they stand for. So take a look. And if they haven't filled it out, you should contact them.
And tell them that they should populate it. Thank you.